Creating classroom conditions that support students developing intrinsic motivation to learn is hard. When you throw in the fact that the classroom we're talking about is a virtual one that both teachers and students have been thrown into with no prior preparation, creating those kinds of conditions become immeasurably more difficult. That doesn't mean we shouldn't try, and it doesn't mean it won't work. But we shouldn't kid ourselves that we've found a silver bullet. Here are a few ideas that build on two elements that researchers have found to be important in encouraging intrinsic motivation to learn: autonomy and competence. Another video will highlight two other qualities. With autonomy, choice is the operative word. The more student choice, the greater sense of student autonomy. Many teachers are applying this concept virtually through the use of choice boards. An online search of that phrase will yield umpteen examples. They are basically a list of various learning tasks, often a mix of online and offline ones, that students can choose to do. If you don't want to do a formal choice board, you can do what I'm doing with my English language learner students, is having them spend 15 minutes a day on one of 3 sites where I can monitor their progress. The 3 sites I use are BrainPop, Raz Kids, and English Central, but you can obviously use whichever ones make most sense for your class. Instead of requiring all your students to read the same book, you could send them to other online libraries that have thousands of other titles, like Epic, Enki Biblioboard, and public library collections. Students can then create video trailers, write book reviews for an authentic audience at multiple review sites, or make a video book talk. In other words, there's autonomy in deciding which books they read, and there's autonomy in how they talk about it afterwards. Competence is another element of helping to develop intrinsic motivation to learn. I'm enforcing a rule in my virtual teaching. If it takes longer than 15 or 20 seconds, or more than 2 or 3 sentences, to clearly explain what I want students to do, I forget about it, or I modify the assignment. This rule functions as a double check on me to increase the likelihood that my students will be able to successfully complete the task. In addition, I try to keep in mind what web developers talk about when they say the user experience has to be frictionless. In other words, whatever assignments or links I place on Google Classroom should only require 1, or at most 2 clicks before students are at the page where they should be able to do the assigned work. Of course, providing models and scaffolds for most assignments support a sense of competence as well. The first time I had students use Flipboard to record a project, in this case, how they spent their day, I had a video model for them to watch and a series of sentence starters for them to use. The last thing I'm trying to do, and believe me, my students would agree, is to hold myself up as a motivation genius. I've had my share of teaching flops, and I will, for sure, rack up a whole lot more of them over these next few months. I just figure it would be good to keep in mind what doctors say about doing no harm. That's not a bad saying for us to keep in mind during our remote learning time, and try to apply these 2 motivation principles, and the 2 discussed in my other video, on how they can help us all be successful in achieving that goal.